proposed bond. And also then talk about if we don't have a bond that passes, what's next? What are the risks we face? Those kinds of things as well. Oh, and Jackie Kennedy is in the back as well, one of our board members. Just saw her, Jackie walk in. Go ahead, John. So what did we do as far as our planning process? So when I was hired, one of the priorities of the board at that time had, this was back in 2023, spring of 23, was concerned about condition of buildings, where those at. And so we started talking, and before I started in the district, we engaged with a company called IDS, or excuse me, I'm going to say like 50 of those tonight, acronyms. So you have to stay with me. We engaged with the company, RSP out of, RSP is another one. Yeah. We engaged with the company out of Wichita to come in and do a facilities assessment. If you haven't been to our website, please do so. If not, I can guarantee you, Terry can help you in the library, Sharon can help you, anyone can help you go there. You will find several hundred pages of photos and a ranking system that has red, yellow, and green based upon systems within the school, whether it be ceilings, whether it be HVAC systems, windows, electrical panels at the early childhood center that are outdated, all those kinds of things. You can go through and see the actual pictures themselves. You can see how they went through and rated each one of those things and said these things need to be fixed. These are good, they're okay. Go from there. We've done financial modeling with Raymond James Public Finance. They have done bonds for municipalities and school districts forever. They've been the district's financial advisor for many, many years as well. And so that is on the website. If you have not been there and you want to see, because I know there's all kinds of information about what is this going to cost, or what's the amount of interest we pay, or what's that term like, or all those kinds of things. Don't take it from me. Don't take it from anybody else. It's right there. You can go in there and you can study that thing to your heart's content and see what actually this looks like financially. We did staff input as well. We did a survey with the staff last spring, and what we did was we just asked about the functionality, meaning how can you teach the way you need to teach within the current building? And does it work for you? Do we have enough space? Those kinds of questions. We got feedback there. And then we did a randomized community phone survey in December of 24. 300 people were called, chosen at random from geographic areas within the Lansing community. Those 300 people were asked a series of questions, everything from how are we performing as a district to different options. Would you support closing the early childhood center and moving them to the elementary school? Would you support athletic facilities? Would you support building a new early childhood center? That entire survey with every question and the responses to those questions is there. Why 300? 300 is statistically significant. So they can take that and they can take those 300 calls and they can extrapolate it out. And for those of you who are mathematicians, the formula is on there. And you get a plus or minus 5. That as far as a percentage of support or not support for that particular item. So I'd really encourage you to go there as well. You're in the libraries, study, study, study. Next. So within our community, what did we get from that survey? What we found is there was really strong support for existing and maintaining our current facilities. People didn't want us to build a new building, and they didn't want us moving and reconfiguring grades. They wanted things the way that they were. And so that was a big part of that support. There was an emphasis on safety and security. Some of you are seasoned like myself, and maybe even a little more seasoned than me. When we went to school, we didn't worry about some of the things we worry about today. We're making sure that our exteriors are hardened and people who we don't want to get in our buildings cannot get in. So there's several safety and security measures that are incorporated into this bond. The highest supported item on that phone survey was for career and technical education. Talked to some of you and your children had gone to Lansing and you were talking about the great education that they got. And I think that is wonderful. Lansing's been known for that. We continue to be. We're above the state average in almost every category tested. Our ACT averages are above. nationally recognized for our AP scores. Lots of really great things happening in the district. However, when we look at that, one of the things that we've been known for is we're kind of a college prep, right? And we don't do as much with career and technical education, meaning the trades, as we should. We have a partnership with Leavenworth and the Pioneer Career Center in Kansas City, Kansas, but we're limited in the number of spots we get. So for instance, if we have kids who want to go into construction and they want to do construction science, we might get 5 spots. We might have 25 kids interested. If we're looking at CNA and nursing, we have 9 spots. We have about 42 kids who are interested. And so those kids who are getting into those later grades, the junior, senior years, they don't get there. What we also know now is, if we look at it, we know the millionaires in our future are plumbers and electricians. You pay a plumber or electrician lately, you know why? In addition to that, they're going to be high demand, as well as healthcare. We all are going to want those kids taken care of us. So getting kids into those careers. And then there was a desire for responsible financial planning and being aware of taxes. We asked the question, we said, okay, on a median priced home in Lansing, what if your taxes went up $100 a year? What's your level of support for that? 48% of the people said they would support it. And we said, what about $50 a year on your taxes? What does that look like? 54% of the people said they would support it. We said, what about 0 impact on your taxes? And people said 56%. So that's the results that we got from that survey. So somebody asked me at the last one, they said, so did you just take that and decide everybody wanted it for that? I said, well, you're talking about 54%, right? And I think once people have a little better understanding of what we're really trying to do long-term with taxes, it might make a little more sense to keep them stable for people. Going on. So why is maintenance the key focus? I think there's something that came up earlier in the conversation. Aging roofs, HVAC system, parking lots, electrical systems. And someone said, well, that school isn't that old. We're moving, I think, to the high school. This does not involve these systems at the high school. High school is fine.
It is middle age, though, for those that don't know.
It is 10 years.
So when you start thinking about it, you go, okay, when did you open the elementary school? You say, well, 2009, that seems like yesterday. And you go 19, we're getting close to 20 years old in that elementary school building. And so, as you know, with your own homes, roofs, HVAC systems, things like that, eventually they got to be replaced and then wear out. So that's where we're at there. The other thing is deferred maintenance and long-term risk and costs. And I'm going to talk specifically about that more later. And then annual budgets alone, not addressing this particular thing. So to give you an idea, roofs are going to be somewhere between $6 million and $6.8 million. That would be a roof on the early childhood center, a roof on the central office, a roof on the elementary school, a roof on the middle school, and a roof on the intermediate school. Anything that?
That's it.
Okay. With that, we're talking about $6.8 million. So we have a roofing consultant that we work with, and initial estimates that roofs came in at $18 million a month. Because they're able to come in with a product that's a thick mill product for those of you who are construction people. And they're able to overlay many areas. However, we have areas that it is saturated. And again, go to our website, please. The roofing study is on there, and included in that roofing study is an infrared study of our roofs. Went up there with infrared. They tested our roofs to see where do we have moisture between the top coat, right, of the roof and the decking. And those are laid out on every building where that is. Wherever that is, you have to cut that out, go all the way to the decking, rebuild it, and go from there. Every place else can be overlaid. And that comes with a 20+ year warranty on those. So taking that into consideration and trying to look at what's the best, most quality and cost-effective way to do that, we're in that $6.8 million estimate now rather than 18 million. If we do nothing, decking deteriorates, we continue to get saturation. Now we're back up to 18 million, and in some cases replacing decking, and now we're closer to 21. And so that's the kind of the situation we're facing with those. Go ahead on. So one of the questions we get also is, well, how did we get here? Why didn't you take better care of this? If you would have, we wouldn't have to pay for this now, right? So what are the questions? I don't want to sound sarcastic, but we wouldn't be here if we could stop time. Because sun runs roofs. HVAC systems running all the time. Wears them out. They only can go for so many years. That's part of it. Parking lots. There are places where we can all look back and say, boy, we should have done this and we should have done that, or why didn't they do this or why didn't they do that? And as I dig in, I find reasons for why they didn't do those kinds of things. But at the same time, where we're at is where we're at right now. And we need to address our situation and our problems and go forward. Otherwise, we're going to cost people a lot more money down the road. So that's really what we're looking at. So what we've put in place is we put in a preventative maintenance system. Doug, the name of it is?
Operation Hero. It's our new CMMS. It allows us to process work orders, and it also allows us to put all of the inventory into the database, and it provides us the information we need to perform preventive maintenance on existing systems and new systems. So it's a wonderfully beneficial tool in helping us take care of what we currently need.
Doug has put that in place since he's led that on board with us. If any of you are scared of AI, close your ears because it's AI. But when we put the serial number or barcode of that into that particular system, it creates a complete preventative maintenance plan for us, which then our maintenance staff can do about 90% of. And then we don't have to call out on that. So the other one is, since I came on board, we brought in Hartman Roofing Consultants. Hartman Roofing Consultants is a roofing company that comes in and does twice a year maintenance on our roofs. They also chase leaks for us. And we have plenty. And so they're chasing those, but they come out and would continue with us with new roofs twice a year. They check every seam, they reseal it. Every penetration in the roof gets resealed. Every parapet wall with a cap gets checked and resealed and goes from there on an annual basis. And then what you hope is that 20-year warranted roof lasts 30. And that really becomes the plan with that. Same thing with our HVAC, with our maintenance and our maintenance systems from there. Parking lots and technology. Every district that I've been in previously, we engage with an asphalt company. That asphalt company comes in and we set up a long-term plan for that. Just like we are doing right now with our technology. We have rebuilt our technology infrastructure. We had some technology that was from 2008 when I came in the district. And we have rebuilt that. And we will have a 12-year plan so that we can budget X amount of dollars every year for technology. And then this gets replaced this year, this gets replaced. The same thing goes for parking lots. Once the parking lots, is with all the exception of the high school, you're looking at a mill and an overlay. So you're going to come into a mill and overlay, you're going to have to cut out some areas. If you haven't been through the Lansing Intermediate School drop-off, I would encourage you to do that, but be careful. Go through that, and there'll be some spaces we need to cut up. But that mill and overlay and then the painting. So what you do then is you work with them again. Within that budget, you say we're going to allocate this much money a year to parking lot. That means a spray overcoat and a repaint on this one this year. Next year we do a spray overcoat and repaint on this one the next year. We crack seal every year. And we go from there in order to do that preventative maintenance plan. And I talked a little bit about technology. And with this improved tracking, what we're trying to do with the system, trying to eliminate those emergency repairs. They cost us a lot of money. a lot of money. And I'll talk about exactly how much coming up. So we looked at multiple funding scenarios. And we tried to look at what did people tell us about taxes? Nobody likes them, right? Told you I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, right? My dad has farmland. I hear about it. I know about taxes. And then we also look at our state evaluation growth. So I'll go up there first. So if we looked at it, we just said, let's just do roofs out of our current operational budget, which takes $6 million out of our current operational budget. Depending on the year, we spend between 83 and 85% of our funds on people. That is salaries, that is benefits, that's people-related expenditures. The other 15% goes for things like utilities, for things like buses, for things like those kinds of things that we have to have in order to make it run. So if we look at that and we say, okay, if we're really going to dig in, the 15%, there's no fluff there. That makes us funky. So then let's cut people. And I've heard a lot about administrators. So let's cut our entire administrative staff. Cut our entire administrative staff, that's $1.4 million. Roofs are 6. Okay, so then what else are we going to cut? Let's start talking about teachers. And we're going to just take teachers who are experienced in our district and been here and their benefits. We're going to add that to it. We're going to say a teacher cost is $70,000 a year. So if a teacher cost is $70,000 per year, and we cut the teacher, it will take us over 80 teachers in order to get to $6 million. I don't know that people want to send their kids to Lansing into that scenario with us running at that level and not offering the programs that we need to offer. So here's one of the things that has come up frequently as well, as far as questions. Why would you take the existing bonds and consolidate with them with the new one and pay this interest and get rid of it? That's not at all the plan. And if you go look at what is in your online within the study that was done by the financial people, you will see that this is like taking out, if you will, a second mortgage on your home. We're not going to touch the existing bond issue. 2 reasons. One reason that we won't touch the existing bond issue is that the interest rate is better than you will find for a long time. If the interest rates go down, awesome. But right now, they're not as good as they were in 2018 when they redid them. Somebody said, well, what was that bond in 2018? It was a refinance of the bond to get a lower interest rate. So if you see that, that's what that was. That was a refinance. And they got a really friendly interest rate. The other thing is that bond issue is grandfathered. And here's what I mean by that. Some of you may remember, who've been longtime residents, back when they did the high school bond, they had these buttons and things that said 41%, or vote for 41%. What they were talking about is 41% state aid. And at that time, the state was paying 41% of the payment on the bond issue. And then the local taxpayers were paying the rest. I understand. State gets taxes from everywhere, including you all. But that 41% was being paid by the state. That percentage is now 50%. And that fluctuates based upon what's called the average assessed valuation per pupil. Lansing, your assessed tax and assessed value is based upon rooftops. You don't have what we call the beasts. The beasts are places like large manufacturing centers that take the burden off of homeowners, or big businesses that take the burden off of homeowners. But most of the impact, anytime we do anything, Lansing homeowners are going to feel because of that. So when we looked at that, we're like, we can't touch that. So we add this on as a separate bond, a second mortgage, if you will. And then it is extending out the timeline of the payoff. The first one will be paid off in 2038. This one will be paid off in 2046. And then the mill levy, as I will talk about in a little bit, in essence stays the same. So we can control that. All right, go ahead. So how is this thing structured? What's this 2-question thing? What are you talking about here? And what about these athletic facilities? And what about those kinds of things? So there's 2 questions. There's question 1 and question 2. Question 1 is all the things I talked about, plus taking down the Olive Street building. I hate to chase a rabbit here, but I will. Somebody asked today, why don't you sell the Olive Street building? If any of you want to walk through there with me, I would be happy to walk through it with you. We don't send our people in there in the summertime because of the climate within there. They have to wear masks. The roof has holes in it, literally. We can see out. The gym is probably the best part of that, and it's rough. So with that, there's no value there. Plus, it sits on some property that would be nice for us to help control traffic and pull it off of 7 Highway and out of those neighborhoods for a middle school drop off in the morning to try and pull that out and around so people aren't fighting that all the time. So that's one of the things about that. But I'll get back to this. Playgrounds, which are handicap accessible playgrounds for all of our kids, along with playground surfacing. If any of you had a chance to go with the kids, grandkids to playgrounds, haven't, please do. The rubber mulch that's on those playgrounds, I've never seen anything like it in my life. It's interesting, and it's a challenge, and it's a challenge for us to keep it going, but we want to make sure that they're safe, and we want to make sure that all of our kids have a chance to play as well. So those are in there. Our safety is in there. Give you an idea of one of the things we do around safety. For those of you who have worked at the fort, you probably know this, but I was told at the bottom tier of the fort on the windows, there's 3M film. That 3M film is bullet resistant, not bulletproof. And it's a shame I have to talk about this. I talked about it, said it a little bit earlier, but hardening our entrances are absolutely critical. We have now in strategic locations some of this film on them. Within the span, the implementation of that film. You've heard about the Nashville shooter. You've heard about others that gained access to buildings by shooting out windows and making their way in. This material will delay that entry and access by up to 7 to 10 minutes. And for us, it's all response time. If we have an incident, it's about how quickly the police can be there, how much time can we buy. So those are the kinds of things we have to think about within the school and the safety system as well, in addition to cameras, in addition to some other features as well. CTE, I'll talk about that specifically on what we're looking at doing with the high school and expanding those programs. As I talked about early childhood, I'll talk about that. Why would we still want to do early childhood? Why are these kids going to preschool? Why do we have a daycare? That's not your job, kind of thing. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So that's question 1. There are 2 athletic facilities in question 1. One of the athletic facilities is tennis courts. Again, I would encourage you to go to the tennis courts. And I encourage you to walk around and see what's happened there with the water, hydraulics that are underneath it. Ask me why, and I get to say I wasn't here. But what I can tell you is they did geotech studies. I see they've done all those kinds of things. They decided that was a good place to, it was an okay place to put them. In the end, it wasn't. And I don't know about in your lifetime, but there's been a time or two that I've done something that was like, well, if I could go back and do that over again, I sure would. But that one is there. It's become unsafe. For the kids, and those are becoming more unusable all the time. It's really important that, again, we do something with that. So what would we do with those? Well, we would do a couple things. Again, for those of you who are construction people, when we start looking at high tension concrete solutions, or we look at moving them, it would be a matter of looking at the whole thing and going, what has been done there to try to mitigate this? And if it hasn't worked, we just need to go to a different place on the campus. And so that's really the decision that'll be made. And again, what's going to last a long time? And what's the best way to do that? The other one is the middle school track. Our middle school track gets used when it's nice, almost every single day by our PD kids. And then in addition, we've gotten to the point where we still practice on it, but we're missing pieces of track surface. So pictures are on the website as well if you don't want to go walk it, but I encourage you to go walk it. Just go out there and see what's he talking about. Along with that, then, when track surfacing no longer is viable, the base gets compromised. You get water and stuff in there and it starts to break up.
You're talking about the track over here?
With the old high school.
Yeah, one over here.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta get my bearings right here. Yes. The intermediate school is over that way. That was the old middle school. We're not doing anything with that.
Well, that's, you have me confused.
Yes. So the old high school track. So that one there, when we look at that, and the other thing is sometimes people would say, why don't the kids just go to the high school practice? And high school, we've done a meet now, the high school, middle school meet. Practice though, I had 4 daughters and one son that my daughters called the biggest diva of them all, but the $4. And they were in 7th grade. I was never going to be excited about them practicing with the high school. For lots of reasons. And seventh grade, rules, we've seen high school boys and practice. So we have that, and then you get into the crowding situation as well. And when does it become safe or unsafe? Plus, we have to put them on buses will take them around the community and go from there. The best solution is to leave them there. So question 2 is on the extracurricular facility improvements. This has to do with improvements with turf at the high school. This has to do with the marching band field, where our kids go out and practice the marching band right outside of the school door and come in soaked up to about mid-thigh. If we have any kind of rain, anything like that, or other things like that. That one also gives us an opportunity for some extra community practice space for some of our littles. When we're not using it, for them to be able to utilize that space for that. And then it is softball, baseball, soccer, marching band. And then eventually we have to replace the football field. And I'll talk about this later. So the football field turf has been in there since 2015 or year 10. Typically, turf is going to last you about a 10-year range. When I came in my first year, we had the field reconditioned. People came in, fluffed up the rubber, did all that, did a test on the fibers, and told us we had 3 to 5 years left before we had to replace it. And that would just be the surface itself that would go back. The base is already in place. And I'll talk about a slide coming up where why would we do turf? Why would we do that? Is that just being too fancy? And is that just spending money ridiculously? So here's how this works. If question 1 passes and question 2 does not pass, question 1 gets done. If question 1 fails and question 2 passes, neither one gets done. So question 2 is contingent upon question 1 passing. Hopefully that makes sense. So what happens if both questions are approved? Both questions, the 30 plus the 5. The mill rate increase would be 0.746 mils. That would take our current mill rate on bonds up to 15.7 mils. $400,000 home, which is about the median price of a home in Lansing. It's $34.32 a year, or $2.86 a month. This is where I give you my disclaimer. Yes, sir.
So as the assessment of value go up of our houses.
Yep.
Does the 34, 32 remain constant over the life of the bond?
No, sir, it does not. And here's, I'm just getting ready to go into that. What you have to remember about taxes is two things. For taxes, it's a math problem. It is your mill rate times your assessed value. If your assessed value goes up and the mill rate stays the same, your taxes will go up. I'm assuming many of you experienced that being in Lansing in the last 10 years, right? Assessed value has gone up. I'm on this side, right? But I also pay taxes. Dad's a farmer. I would rather have them go up than go down. And what we know is quality schools contribute to your assessed values going up. Oftentimes I'm like, would you sell your home for what you bought it for? So there's lots of different questions to ask around that, but absolutely, we want to be 100% transparent. It is a math problem. This stays, if our mill rate stays the same, that goes up. We don't control assessed value. County controls assessed value, and it's based upon what your neighbor sold their house for, or what happened down the street. That's where assessed value gets
So
calculated.
should we assume that tax is gonna go up, or payments are gonna go up? Wait, let me finish the question.
Yes, sir.
All right, does that mean that you will be able to pay the bond off early?
That is a great question. That is a great question. So we have to collect a certain amount in taxes every year in order to pay for that particular bond issue. If the assessed value goes way up and we're able to collect more money than is needed to make that, the board can do one of two things. The board can pay the bond off early, as you said, or number two, the board can lower the mill rate. They can do one of the two. The interesting part about here is I've given you, if both of them pass at 0.746. What happens when you see what we're spending out of our operational budget right now in order to keep our current systems going? You'll see that the board could have the option of saying, you know what? Maybe we don't need to have the COLA, or the cost of living mill rate, as high as we can. Maybe we bring it down to that zero. I'm not telling you they're going to do that. I'm saying they have that option. They could adjust the mill rate if we don't need it in operational funds as much as we do now. If the bond doesn't pass, they're going to need as much in operational funds as possible, which means they're going to have to find additional revenue going on. Cost savings for modernization. Here's where, what if we pass this, what would we see? LED lighting, we'll give you an exact number that's estimated on that annually. Modern HVAC for emergency repairs and improved efficiencies. Within the last 18 months, we've spent $433,000 on roof repairs and HVAC. Within the last 18 months. That's available for you if you want to see it. And request it. But we spent that on that. If we have updated roofing, longer life cycles, fewer leaks that we're chasing, reduced insurance risk. Here's one thing that, unless you're an avid watcher of board meetings, you follow this really closely. What we had was we had a situation last year. Our insurance carrier, we went through Riley and Company. And Riley and Company bid it out, right? They're brokers. And we were carried by an insurance company called EMC. EMC carried a lot of schools in Kansas and across the United States. And EMC was our property casualty insurance company. They did an inspection of our roofs and came in and said, based upon your roofs and the condition of your roofs, your premium is going to go up $450,000 this year. And your deductible will go from $50,000 per roof to 5% of the building value. So that means if the high school is valued at $75 million, if we had a roof that needed to be replaced because of wind or hail, we'd have to come up with 5% of that value as a deductible. So obviously we're like, man, we got to do something different than paying $450 and 5% building value, because we don't have enough cash on hand. And if you don't have the cash on hand, you can do what's called no fund warrants in Kansas. You take out a loan from the state in order to get that, and then the state requires you to assess additional mills in order to make that pay. So we didn't want to do that. That's not a possibility. So what can we do? So we shopped. We ended up in a group with the Kansas Association of School Boards that has a conglomeration, if you will, cooperation around the state. They have districts go together to buy property casualty insurance to try to save money. They're the lowest that we found. Our premium went up $350,000 and our deductibles are $150,000 per roof. So that's a real cost that's associated with our current condition. That happened because of this. It comes out of operational funds. They're going to go to other things or us being able to build a healthy cash reserve. So let's talk about CTE for a minute, career and tech ed. So what would we do with career and technical education? I talked about CNA and all that. You know what our most requested program was when we go survey our kids? You may want to venture a guess. Healthcare, auto mechanics, need them. Our number one requested one was culinary arts. Surprising, shocked me. Culinary arts was a little higher than CNA. So when we look at this with the updated and expanded CTE spaces, we have a current culinary arts area, which with residential equipment. What we do is renovate that, we make it a hybrid, residential equipment with some commercial. Our kids can then get a certification called ServSafe. ServSafe allows them to go to be in a restaurant. And in other places, like then the Eudora DeSoto Technical Center, maybe you've ever seen that. We've never seen it. I was part of building that. So when we built that, we had kids going to Johnston and Wales and all kinds of places on scholarships after we had that in place. And so that was a really important feature for us as well. But that would be that. In addition to it, we look at a biomedical center and say, oh my God, what are you talking about? Biomedical center, where how much money? We renovate existing space within the high school to create a CNA EMT area. Where our kids could get their CNA while they're in high school. Not going to get Linsky sitting up here and tired of me picking on it. But I'm tired of the story, but if we had a kid who was a brilliant kid in school, in a little school I was in Nebraska, we had a CNA program. 4 kids get their CNA out of there every year. And those kids, you know, get in there without much experience. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor and surgeon and all this. So this really smart kid, he goes into this program, takes the program in CNA, and then he figures out I have to touch people. Bottom's gross. He's like, no, I don't want to be a doctor. He did.
I was an EMT at age 16. Yeah, I was an EMT starting out.
So he went into engineering, and but sometimes it's that, right? Kids need to decide what they don't want to do before you put a whole bunch of money and time and effort into it to figure out that's not really what I want to do, but I can at least explore it. Construction. Within our high school, if you haven't been down to a wood shop area, a wood shop would be what I would consider kind of like a junior high wood shop. We have a great architectural program, unbelievable design program. Our kids do really, really well in there. But when it comes to construction, that gets set up for building cabinets, building like cutting boards, things like that. What we want is kids framing, we're pouring concrete, we get them exposed to electrical, we get them exposed to the other stuff as well. So renovating that space in order to do it. But there was one new thing I would want. You know, the board not said yes, and we haven't chased this very far. But one thing I would love is what I call urban agriculture. So when we talk about urban agriculture, I look at the lawn mowing services and the lawn services around town. There are several that are Lansing High School lawns that run those particular programs. Urban agriculture would be landscaping, would be horticulture, working in the greenhouses, and those kinds of things as well. Golf course management, turf management, that kind of stuff, and get our kids exposed to that. And then the other one we're working through with KCK, and it would just require us a classroom space, would be an introduction to industrial technology. Industrial technology would be robotics, pneumatics, hydraulics. So robots that run the factories are the things people to maintain those, keep those going. And so get kids exposed to that at least. Will they get their degree through us? No, but will they get at least exposure to it? And then they can continue to KCK or one of those others. Working places around the Kansas City metro area, Panasonic, for instance. And this again was our highest priority. Go ahead, Sharon. Here's one that sometimes we get questions about. Why would we have an early childhood program? And why do we have an early childhood center? We have 150 kids every day that come to our early childhood center. 150. So when we look at that, about half of them in our daycare, and about half of them are in our early childhood specialty programs. So what our early childhood specialty programs are is for kids who are identified early on as having a disability. Potentially a learning disability, maybe a physical disability, something like that, that might prevent them from learning like their typical peers. And so they get a head start. And then go ahead.
Where is the early childhood center?
200, the current middle school, old high school, it's the building that sits in front of it.
It used to be Lansing Elementary.
Yes, yes. So you have those two buildings that sit side by side. One of them is where like my office is in the central operations, and then the other one is for the child.
Are all the classrooms used?
Yes. Yes, they are.
When you talk about childcare, what children get to go there?
They apply. So it started before my time, but it started as a program for employees, kind of as a recruitment retention thing. And then they expanded it in order to make it run closer to the black, to where it could, in essence, sustain itself. We're very close to running at that point right now. So we have people that apply from the community who come in. We have a waiting list for early childhood. What we know is with daycares, library communities have daycares. That's what brings in families to the community. That's a place that I can take my kids. Those kinds of things. And if you don't, they keep looking. So what we're trying to do here, this is the bulk of our money being put in over the roof. There's about $5 million that's set aside for this renovation. It needs electrical redone. It needs the roof redone. It needs the full HVAC redone. It needs our intercom systems redone. It needs our fire panel and fire alarm systems redone. Patching it together. And then it needs just some other cosmetic renovations on the outside. It needs tuck pointing. If you go by and look at the brick, you'll see where all the tuck pointing is needed on that building. So this would be the place that of the 30 million, one place we're putting a significant amount would be in this building in order to keep it going, because the community told us they didn't want a new one. And quite honestly, if we were to try to build a new early childhood center, it would cost us about $7 million more, and there wasn't tolerance for that. And it was something that we decided budgetarily to stick with doing it. So what we would do is update it with safer learning environments. We don't have a secure entrance. What we run into with early childhood or young children is non-custodial parents who want to come in and pick up a child. So if they come to the building, we want a secure vestibule where we know who's coming in. They don't have immediate access into our buildings. That's one of the things that's in there as well. And then we want to focus on readiness and long-term success with that as well. Go ahead, Sharon. So I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go back to early childhood. You'll find this on our website too. And if you're bored, we can keep you reading for days. But if you go on our website, you'll see on there a couple of studies about early childhood education. Back in 1967, Chicago started the study, and they followed students for 30 years who went to quality preschool programs. And they said, what is the effect of a quality preschool program on these kids over their lifetime? They followed them for 30 years. What they found was their prison rates were much less, their academics were better, and their lifetime earnings were way up. That study is on there, you can read it. You don't believe me. And then K-12, what's it do for us? There's more information about this on the website as well, that you'll find within there. For every dollar that we invest in early childhood, we save 11 in the rest of the system because we're catching them early. If the student is at risk, meaning they have some type of disability, but if the student also comes from certain types of homes, those kinds of things that are identified as at risk, for every dollar that's invested, we save 18. And so it's not only a good moral, ethical, societal problem to address by having those programs available, it also helps us financially. So check that out. What about the athletic field improvements? I talked about this already. $5 million. Question 2. Why would we do this? There was a piece on our Facebook that came out today that explained why we would do all of those things. And why would you spend the extra money? What you will find, and Google it, Chat GPT it, one of those things that you do. How long is payback on turf versus natural grass? And what about safety, and what about all those things? Payback on turf was 6 to 8 years. What do I mean by payback? I mean water, fertilizer, chemicals, reseed, plugging it, manpower, mowing, gas, everything else that goes in it. You add that up over years and you look at the cost of turf. It's about 6 to 8 years. So let's say we have 8 years. And we'll take the top end. We'll say that it's taken us 8 years to pay off the high school football field turf. We are now in 2025 at 10. We've driven the car and had it paid off for 2 years. And we've driven it for free. We're hoping to get 2 to 3 more years out of it. That's the kind of thing when we look at it financially, it's responsible to do this. We're just doing it because you want to be fancy. There's a reason that almost every other team in our conference and our league and in the area has turf. Both the reasons of that and the other. Some of you remember a guy named George Toma. George Toma was the groundskeeper for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he did many, many Super Bowls. That thing was pristine, man. It was awesome. And all those facilities worked, but there were millions of dollars put in those facilities, and they would replace the grass during the season. And they would do all those kinds of things. We cannot do that. And if we get a wet game, we'll get one of those, it's going to get ready. When it gets ready, it gets dangerous. And so they have done studies in Europe that have shown that in soccer, turf is much safer than natural grass for significant leg injuries. In the US, with American football, it's about even. You can find a study that says it one way, a study that says it another. But what I will tell you is condition of the field matters. And if we're playing on grass that gets torn up, it gets much more dangerous for us. So there's a couple reasons. One is practical reasons of things like community use. We had little kids play football on it, 4th graders playing the football game on it this year. We're going to have 5th and 6th grade football next year. I understand the community is starting that can utilize our football field. We always have people looking for soccer. We have always had people looking for other things as well. And so making some of that available to them is important. And if you have turf, they just go. We don't have to get anything ready. We have to do anything. We just go when they need. So what happens if the bond doesn't pass? If the bond doesn't pass, as I said, we can't do everything out of it. We cannot go in there and say, okay, we're going to do parking lots, we're going to do roofs, we're going to do all that. We're going to find the money in some, and it's caught, Mr. Kobza has set aside somewhere in the budget. Doesn't exist. But what if we chip away at it? What if we start saving for it? What if we do that? Why don't we have the money set aside? And I'll talk just briefly about that because I think this crowd is probably sophisticated enough about finance to ask that question. Why don't you have the money set aside? Where did that go? I don't need to say it before my time, but I will. In 2014, the district was in a special education co-op up until that time with Leavenworth and Leavenworth County. 2014, that co-op dissolved for lots of reasons. The district then went out on its own. And when the district went out on its own, it cost more money than being in the co-op. Some reserves were eaten up during that process. In 2017, the state of Kansas made cuts to the budget. During that particular tenure and that particular term. Some of them were made during the school year, after the budget year had already started. As a result of that, Kansas relaxed some laws and rules around school finance. For example, the bond and interest, or excuse me, the capital outlay fund was before, when I was in Kansas the first time, before it could only be spent on facilities and maintenance. That's it. That's all it could be spent on. So in 2017, when the state made a bunch of cuts, the education, they said, oh, by the way, now you can take your capital outlay and you can use it for salaries of your maintenance and custodial staff. This district, like many others, did that in order to keep things afloat. And so some of that capital outlay money, salaries, rather than specifically for facilities and stuff like that. We are working and chipping away at getting it back out of there. Some things we've done in our budget to save money, some other things that we've done in order to start moving that back out so that money becomes available. But that's quite frankly where we're at. There's no other way to skin that cat. Yes.
Yes, so what you just said is related to my question about assuming question one passes.
Yes.
Are there fiscal controls for that money that goes to facilities, maintenance, and renovation? In other words, I think your urban agriculture idea is awesome. But if I was a board member and I had like-minded board members to say, you need to hire X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
So are there any fiscal controls to prevent that, which would, I mean, I'm not saying this board would set
Yes.
out of control, but they may spend too much on personal salaries
Yes.
and
That is-
defeat the purpose of the.
Yeah, that is a great question. So what happens with operations if we are able to pass the bond issue? If we don't pass the bond issue, there won't be CTE classes, right? But if we are, that $433,000 that I talked about that is being spent on roof repairs and HVAC systems right now, is up within the operation budget. In addition, we have the premium on the property casualty insurance. We can free up some money there. But for those positions, typically what you don't see is full-time people hired. For example, the CNA teacher in the districts that I came from was a school nurse. That was an RN. And they took an hour or two of the day when they taught CNA. For construction, we would try to partner with the construction, get a company, get an alternative certification. That's someone or one of our employees, or maybe someone with retired from construction, and I work for an hour or two a day in order to provide those classes for those kids. So we would try to be very cautious about how we move forward, but some of those monies that we saved if the bond passes on keeping things going now could be dedicated toward that.
So it can be used for salaries,
Yes,
faculty, staff.
yes, because we don't even have enough in. Yeah, not really like not dedicated to those things, like our insurance comes out of our operational fund, which is general funding on our local option budget. And much of the repairs that we do, not all of that is coming out of capital outlay. That's coming out of our operational funds. That's what we've tried to do. We've tried to rebuild a healthy cash balance. So ours was low when we came in. And we tried to move salaries out of capital outlay. So capital outlay was there. So the preventative maintenance pieces I talked about, parking lots, HVAC, roofing, budgeting this amount every year is there in capital outlay every year. Let's be able to do those things. Okay, you're talking about major projects being spread over many years. We're also talking about delays in replacing our roofs, HVAC infrastructure. We talked about that, CTE. We know that construction costs are going up, just like assessed values is going up. Construction costs are going up over the years as well. And then bring up that money in our operational costs and do just what we talked about. Next. Construction cost, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'll just give you an idea. We throw COVID out. As we saw COVID, right? We saw some 100% increases in stuff, and that's not fair. So what's happened in the last few years? This is what we've seen in the last few years. This is based upon Kansas City regional stuff. What we know is we've got this thing called the chief state. It's supposed to come in about 13, 15 miles down the road. And if that starts and the star bonds go, who knows when it'll start, all those kinds of things. If that happens, trades will become very, very scarce. Because they're going to be in the billions of dollars over there spending on that. Next. So we looked at some alternative finance options. I think this was on social media today. Somebody forwarded it to me and said, hey, can you address this? Let me see it today. I think someone had posted that the state had a program where you could do a loan for 0% interest and pay for HVAC and energy savings and all this kind of stuff. That's not exactly accurate. What they do have is they have what's called an energy savings performance contract, an ESPC. And those are performed by ESCOs. A lot of times when I'm talking to the board, I'll say an ESCO. But I'm talking about the companies that do the energy savings performance contracting. So the state has a law, and they say this, that school districts and municipalities can use this tool. That if you are going to do a project that is going to save you money, that you can take out a loan, and then the theory behind it, it's not required, but the theory behind it is you use the savings from the stuff that you put in order to make the payment on the equipment that you put in, right? Makes sense. So we said, all right, let's take a look at that. Roofs are critical, right? If we had roofs, and we've got to get roofs. Roofs go, buildings go. So we need to get roofs in there. They'll allow us to put roofs in there because if you put a new roof on, it's supposed to increase your R value. Your insulation and all that stuff is supposed to save you some money. When we worked with an energy savings, one of these contracting organizations said estimate that goes, it's negligible. You're not going to see it because you're putting a new surface on, you're not putting 6 more inches insulation or anything like that. But what you will save on is LED lighting. So if we converted all our lighting to LED across the district, we could see ourselves save $125,000 a year. That's the estimate. Pretty good. So if we took our lighting, LED lighting cost, and the cost of roofs at $6 million, we added them together, that would be $8.3 million. Anybody following me? So we need to take out a loan for $8.3 million to get our roofs done, and we get our roofs done by including the LED lighting. Otherwise, it goes away. So we look at that and we say, okay, let's do that over a 10-year period of time. So we would look at an annual payment of just $1 million something, and this is at 5% interest because the interest rate on those loans are higher than they are on bonds. We sell bonds for bond issues. So our savings, $1 million, our savings is $125,000. So if we just put our savings toward this payment, what we'd have to come up with out of existing operational funds and capital outlays, $949,000 and change for the next 10 years. Total payment, $10,748,000, $2.4 million. That means that money is captured, tied up, tied together. We say basically $1 million a year. That is not doable for us out of existing funds and capital outlay. So we do what the good cause salesman says, right? What's the payment you want to make? We can take you from 48 months to 72 months. We can make that work for you. So we said, okay, what about 20 years? So we look at 20 years, 8.3 million. We can get our payment to 680, 125, $554,673. Total payments for 20 years is 13 million, with $5.3 million in interest. And then some superintendent comes along in 7 or 8 years and said, who was the idiot? Because we have to come up with this money every single year and not go from there. And if we got to come up with that money, you come up with it by some cuts, but you also come up with it by increasing revenue. And we all know what that means. So from a fiscal standpoint and a responsibility standpoint toward the taxpayers, these options just really didn't make sense to us. Moving on. So bigger picture, if we do the alternative financing, even if we decide bond doesn't pass, you want to do that. We get roofs done in LED. We don't get parking lots. We don't get HVAC. We don't get CPE. We don't get the windows that are rusted out at the middle school on the that side of the building. We don't get any of those kinds of things done. Safety upgrades don't happen. You're exactly right. So, and that's just on the $30 million one I'm talking about, not the 5. So it's a partial solution, and then we're years down the road. Plus, any of the money we would have used to chip away at projects is dedicated toward that payment. We think this is a comprehensive approach. That's why we put it out there. We think it's responsible to taxpayers. I know. We hear bond issues and we think, oh my God, my taxes again. When are they going to stop? But when we look at it and we go, the old minus commercial, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. This is trying to get it now and keep people seeing yo-yos. Let's remain consistent. The yo-yo is assessed back. I'm not denying that, right? But from the school district standpoint and establishing that mill rate, let's not jack around with that mill rate on people, especially those who pay through escrow and things like that. So we did as much research as we could. We went through it. We tried to get the community input. We went from there and tried to put it out there for everybody. But last, if you guys are barcode people, if you're not, just take out your phone camera and that will come up on your phone camera, and then you click it and it'll take you to all the things I just talked about. You can go to all the things I just talked about. If you don't follow us on Facebook, you all have Facebook? We're all of the generation where we have Facebook. Younger people don't have any of it. Facebook's old, but we're on Facebook. You can go on there. We've been trying over the last several weeks to put one thing out. Like today is about turf. We had one tomorrow.
Sherry keeps saying tomorrow.
We had one a few weeks ago that answered your question exactly. What about taxes? Right on that slide, we say taxes are a math problem. It's your mill rate times your assessed value. If your assessed value goes up, your taxes are going to go up.
Or you could lower the mill rate.
We
So they
could.
stay the same.
You could.
I mean, that is an option.
You could.
Only when the
Because-
school district has enough money to pay the bills.
Or the
This is a
state,
different bill.
or the state could
This
really
is-
fund special education.
This is, right, it's past, it's coming from past, whatever.
Yeah, it took us 20 to 30 years to get here, and it may take us 20 to 30 years to get out.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me, this is gonna sound like a dumb question, but where does the money actually from just our taxes, what actually funds like the district? Just taxes, like personal taxes?
Right. So how is it funded? Man, how many more hours do you have? But I will.
Briefly, I mean,
I'll give you really briefly.
highlight.
So what we get a bit, what's called a base state aid. We get a base state aid of about $5,600 from the state per student. On top of that base state aid, there are 11 factors that they take in. They can transportation, at risk, special education, many other things. Those are added into that, and then you get a total from that. And then there is a local option budget. That in addition to the state aid that you get in the general fund, there's a local option budget that's assessed. The district is assessed 33% on the local option budget. So whatever comes in the general fund, 33% is on top of it. And then over here is capital outlay. And that's 8 mils. And then over here is bond and interest. Pay for bond issues that the community has approved. So you've got those different categories. And then there's federal funds as well. So when we take that into consideration, and I encourage you to, and when you get on our website to look at a document called budgeted requirements. We run about a $40 million a year operation. About $5 million of it comes directly from our local taxpayers. So when you start looking at that, you go, well, how is that the case? Local option budget, like I talked about with the state aid, taxes that are assessed on that, 52% of those taxes are paid by the state. And then 48% of the local option budget is paid by our local taxpayers. 8 mils, 54%, of the capital outlay, those 8 mils, 54% of that amount that's raised is paid by the state. 46% is paid by the district. We are a heavy state aid district. And it's because we have rooftops, and I know it doesn't feel like it to you, right? But we have the rooftops, and because of that, we have what's called a low assessed value per pupil. So what they do is they take the number of pupils you have in the district, divide it by your assessed value, and it sits on the scale. They do that across the entire state for every district. If you are above that, like Blue Valley, Olathe, you get 0 state aid on anything. And they don't have to worry about it because they have billion-dollar companies sitting in their district, right? If you're like Lansing, and most of your assessed value is housetops, rooftops, farmland, whatever it may be, you sit down here. Your assessed value per pupil is low, so the state kicks in. And their philosophy was behind that was they used Galena for an instance back in the day, which has really low assessed values, and said whether you live in Blue Valley or Galena, you shouldn't. Every child in Kansas should get a somewhat equal education, opportunity for education. So the state kicks in to those property poor districts in order to allow them to do the same kind of things they do with very wealthy districts.
And then quick question, so when the state legislature fails to fully fund special education, where does that money come from? Does that come from that,
Comes from our general fund.
that $17,000?
The tune of about $3 million. Yes.
We have some questions online.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got a few. The first is about roofs. Given that the roof inspection was completed in 2024, are those cost estimates still guaranteed if the bond is passed? If they are not guaranteed, what is the plan to address any increase in costs?
No estimate is guaranteed. Be the first thing I will tell you, but yes, in fact, we met with roofers today, and they still feel good about their roofers.
A second question, if the bond issue passes, how do we make sure that the deferred maintenance issues do not happen again?
Yeah, I will go back to that slide without beating a dead horse, but I'll go back to the one with, as Doug talked about, the preventative maintenance system and putting all that in place. Us chipping away at the money that was spent on salaries out of capital outlay, getting it out of there, having that maintenance program for parking lots, having the maintenance program for roofs, our HVAC systems, getting the PM. It doesn't mean in 25 years that some guy isn't standing or gal isn't standing here in front of you talking to you again, right? Because 25 years from now, the sun's going to beat on the roofs and the HVAC systems are going to run. But those are some of the things that we have in place and that we're working. We've been slowly chipping away at that capital outlay.
Another question, how long does the turf last?
Right. Our turf right now is 10 years at the high school. And based upon the testing that we had done 2 years ago, they said we got about 5, which leaves us about 3 more, so about 13 years. You'd expect somewhere between 10 and 15 years.
And then you kind of covered this one already, but I just want to make sure it gets asked. Is there a plan to transition salary expenses out of the capital outlay fund so that those funds can be preserved for the intended purpose of building maintenance and repair?
Yes, ma'am. We are working diligently with that. Yes.
How do people that bring their kids in from outside the district, how are they paid?
Very good. So people come in from outside of the district, how do they pay?
Question, then the audience can be repeated, so.
Yes. I sure will. The question was, out of district students who come in from out of district and opt into our district as an open enrollment district, how do they pay, or how do they pay in order to do that? We receive state aid for those kids, just like we would for any kid within the district. As far as do they pay some local property tax or something like that? No, they're paying property taxes in the district that they're in, as well as us. For us, the out of district students have come to Lansing for a very long time. They stabilize our enrollment. What I mean by that is that as we go up and down. One of the things that I didn't talk about was a study from RSP that's on the website as well. It's a demographic study. It's fascinating. You all should go do it. And what it has on there is how many students do we get per household? And so, let me finish your question. State aid, we get from them. They pay property taxes in their local district, not in ours. We bring them in to help stabilize our enrollment so we don't see yo-yos, and we can keep things operational and offer all the programming we want for the kids and clients. That if we didn't have some of that additional state aid coming in, we have to cut some of the programs that are valuable. So in that RSP study, because I know you all see the houses going in, right? What about capacity? Are you going to be coming and asking us for a new building because we're growing again? We need to do that. You'll find in that RSP study, K through 12, within our existing facilities, the ones we're looking at renovating, we have capacity for 650 more students that can come into our district. With our out-of-district kids, that capacity, if we weaned off of out-of-district kids, as in-district kids came in, you could go up to 1,000. So take that into consideration. That study also tells us that for every residence we have, that's apartment, trailer house, single family home, we average about 0.48 students per home. I don't know how you divide them up, but they 0.48 is the average. But that 0.48 kids per home. So if we have 194 homes coming in, if we do the math real fast, just say we can have 90 kids. That's being conservative, will come from there. So what the district can do, we run really well in that 2,400 to 2,600 range. When I say run really well, kind of optimizing staffing, class sizes, programs, those kinds of things. And so we can establish our capacities, and you'll see what our capacity is per grade level on our website as well. But we establish our capacities, and then we can control how many kids we take from out of district. We can say we're at capacity no more in that grade level. But we may have room in another one. So that study is on there too. So I'd really encourage you to take a look at that. It's fascinating to see where the majority of our kids come from, because there's the statistics on there. How many come from multifamily homes or apartment complexes? How many come from trailer houses? How many come from single family homes? And that's broken out. So you can see if there's new development coming in, it's going to be kind of in this range of price, and it's actually done geographically as well. How many kids come from this neighborhood? How many kids come from this neighborhood? And you can see those if you kind of like to nerd out on those things. Check it out. But we have, so in essence, it would take about 2,000 homes for Lansing to be at a point where somebody's going to stand here and ask you to build a new building this world capacity. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
The early childhood education, each one of those students also receive 5,600.
No, they're funded differently. So our early childhood is funded differently through a grant through the state. And they don't get quite as much. They're there for half a day. And so they don't get as much as like 56. They're not counted in our K through 12.
Is there any plan to expand that to take more than 150 kids?
Yes. It involves this. I'm sorry to tell you, it involves this. Because we are using one space. And with our daycare, you know, one of the renovations in there is restrooms. The restrooms are made for older kids. And if you're taking a 2-year-old potty, I don't know how that. So 4-year-old. And so it's making those facilities more usable for the kids who are in.
I may have gotten lost somewhere, but you separated out into 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am. Why did we separate it out? Because when the community did the survey, the athletic facilities were not supported as much as the others. Again, I think once people hear why, it makes sense, but at that time, we're asking it kind of out of the gate. And again, it's prioritization. Absolute priority is the roofs. All those kinds of things. The athletic facilities make sense, but we need the other stuff done. Absolutely.
We'll still get the same amount of money if we pass one.
We get 30 million if you pass, we get 35 if we pass. Yes. Thank you all. There you go. Y'all need any more? Yes, sir.
Are you putting money today into the life cycle repair and maintenance? So that 15 years down the road, we're not here again.
Yeah, so great question. His question was, we're putting money today in the life cycle repair and cost. Right now, our money is going to keeping things running right now. When you get there, the way you set it up is you go, okay, we're gonna need to redo this parking lot at this location at this particular time. So we're gonna need to set aside $20,000 a year for the next 5 years for that parking lot. And that's exactly how you do it. So you set it up. To tell you that we're doing that right now, we're trying to keep our head above water. That's where we're at. You don't need milk and cookies for bed. I put you to sleep. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate your question.
Thank you.